A successful black surgeon shopping for a multi-million-dollar yacht faces blatant discrimination until the marina's owner witnesses everything from her office and immediately terminates her highest-earning salesman. The oceanside luxury marina gleamed under the relentless Miami sun, a playground for the ultra-wealthy where fortune and status floated on turquoise waters. Sleek, multi-million-dollar vessels lined the immaculate docks, their polished hulls and chrome fixtures reflecting the light like jewels. The exclusive yacht dealership occupied pride of place at the marina's center, a modernist temple of glass and steel where dreams were sold at prices most people couldn't imagine. Dr. Elijah. Washington stepped out of his understated Tesla, pausing to take in the impressive sight before him. At 52, the cardiovascular surgeon carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had spent decades in operating rooms where millimeters and milliseconds made the difference between life and death. His medical innovations had revolutionized valve replacement procedures, eventually leading to a medical technology startup that pharmaceutical giant Medicorp had acquired just 3 months ago for an eye-watering 9-figure sum. Today, dressed in comfortable jeans and a simple navy polo shirt, Elijah was finally pursuing the dream he'd harbored since childhood, owning a yacht that would let him embrace the freedom of the open water. He'd grown up watching the wealthy sail, past his family's modest home near the Florida coast, promising himself that someday he'd be on the water rather than watching from shore. After decades of relentless work and recent financial windfall, that day had finally arrived. Inside the showroom, Bradley Sterling was explaining financing options to a middle-aged white couple, his well-practiced charm on full display. At 45, Bradley had spent 2 decades in luxury yacht sales, building a reputation for record-breaking commission checks and what he called his customer intuition, his knack for identifying serious buyers from browsers. His tailored suit and Rolex watch were calculated signals of success, designed to mirror the wealth of his clientele. Bradley glanced up as Elijah entered the showroom, his practiced smile never wavering as his gaze swept over the casually dressed black man. In an instant, Bradley made his assessment and returned his attention to the couple, explaining the tax advantages of registering their potential purchase in the Cayman Islands. The couple had mentioned budget constraints twice during their conversation, but Bradley recognized them as his type of client. Meanwhile, Catherine Martinez observed the showroom from her second-floor office, where floor-to-ceiling windows provided a comprehensive view of her domain. At 60, Catherine had built Oceanside from nothing after starting as a bookkeeper at a failing boat rental outfit 30 years earlier. Her silver-streaked black hair and sharp eyes reflected the no-nonsense approach that had helped her survive and thrive in the male-dominated world of luxury yachts. Her reputation for integrity and zero tolerance for unprofessional behavior was as much a part of Oceanside's brand as the multi-million-dollar vessels they sold. Elijah moved through the showroom, studying the detailed models and specification sheets for the larger yachts. He paused before a display for the Oceanus 85, a $7.2 million vessel that aligned perfectly with his vision, making notes on his phone. Twice he looked up, making eye contact with Bradley, who promptly turned away to greet a white customer who had just entered. After attempting to flag down another salesperson who was quickly redirected elsewhere by Bradley, Elijah found himself standing alone for 30 minutes in a showroom designed for personalized service. He watched as Bradley energetically toured the white couple through a yacht half the size of the one Elijah was considering, describing customization options and maintenance packages with enthusiastic detail. The message was clear. Some customers deserved attention while others didn't, and the dividing line had nothing to do with the money in their accounts. It was a scenario Elijah had encountered countless times throughout his life and career. In luxury car dealerships, high-end restaurants, exclusive clubs. Success had not shielded him from prejudice. Sometimes it seemed to make the contrast even starker when he stepped outside the professional environments where his credentials were known. Elijah checked his watch, weighing his options. He could leave, taking his multi-million-dollar purchase to one of the other dealerships along the coast. It would be the easiest path, avoiding confrontation and the familiar sting of having to prove his legitimacy. Or he could stand his ground, refusing to let someone else's prejudice dictate his actions in a place where, by all rights, his money should speak louder than his skin color. As another white customer received Bradley's immediate attention, Elijah made his decision. Elijah approached the scale model of the Oceanus 85, studying its sleek lines and innovative hull design. The yacht represented everything he'd been searching for: luxury without ostentation, cutting-edge technology with classic seafaring principles, and enough space to comfortably host his extended family. As he examined the detailed specification sheet listing the vessel's twin 1900 HP engines and state-of-the-art navigation systems, he noticed Bradley finishing with his current customers. Making a deliberate move to place himself in Bradley's sightline, Elijah waited for acknowledgement. Bradley's eyes swept past him as if he were invisible, immediately focusing on an older white couple who had just entered the showroom. "Welcome to Oceanside Luxury Marina," Bradley called out warmly, striding past Elijah without a glance. "Let me know if you have any questions about our exceptional vessels." Determined not to be deterred, Elijah directly approached Bradley as he finished greeting the newcomers. "Excuse me, I'm interested in the Oceanus 85 and had some questions about the customization options." Bradley turned with visible reluctance, his smile tightening into something perfunctory and cold. "The 85 starts at $7.2 million, he stated flatly, the implication clear in his tone. "Specifications are on the sheet." Without waiting for a response, he turned back to the white couple. "Now, were you looking for something in the 50-foot range, or would you prefer something more spacious?" Elijah stood there, the dismissal hanging in the air between them. The message couldn't have been clearer if Bradley had spoken it aloud. "You don't belong here. You can't afford this. Stop wasting my time." Moving to another display, Elijah overheard Bradley enthusiastically describing financing options to the same white couple he'd been helping earlier. "Many of our clients prefer our flexible payment structures. They allow you to preserve capital for other investments. We can discuss some creative approaches if the initial numbers are beyond your current comfort zone." The irony wasn't lost on Elijah. Bradley was bending over backward to make a sale to customers who had explicitly mentioned budget constraints, while making zero effort with a customer prepared to make a straightforward cash purchase. After examining several more models, Elijah approached Bradley again, this time with specific technical questions about the Oceanus's desalination system. Bradley barely glanced at him. "Look," he said with thinly veiled impatience, "there's a dealership in Fort Lauderdale that carries more affordable options, something that might be better aligned with your situation." He handed Elijah a business card for a competitor that specialized in smaller vessels. "They might be a better fit for what you're looking for." "And what exactly am I looking for?" Elijah asked, his voice level despite the simmering anger beneath. "Just trying to save you some time," Bradley replied with a dismissive shrug before turning away again. As Elijah continued to navigate the showroom alone, he noticed he wasn't the only one receiving this treatment. A well-dressed black couple had entered and were similarly being ignored, while Bradley personally escorted white patrons around the various yacht models. A younger salesperson, a woman in her late 20s with a nameplate reading Sophia, noticed, Elijah studying the electronic systems brochure, and approached him. "Those are state-of-the-art navigation systems," she offered helpfully. "Would you like me to show you how they interface with the autopilot functions?" Before Elijah could answer, Bradley materialized beside them. "Sophia, the Millers need assistance with their financing paperwork," he said firmly. Then, with a conspiratorial aside that was intentionally loud enough for Elijah to hear, "This gentleman is just browsing. I've already assisted him." As Sophia reluctantly departed, the contrast in Bradley's behavior became impossible to ignore. With white customers, he was warm, engaging, and persistent, offering champagne, detailed explanations, and enthusiastic encouragement. With Elijah, he was cold, dismissive, and actively discouraging, making assumptions about his financial capacity without bothering to ask a single qualifying question. Standing alone beside a $9 million yacht that no one would show him, Elijah felt the familiar weight of these accumulated indignities. His credentials, his success, his actual purchasing power, none of it mattered in the face of Bradley's predetermined judgment. It was the same story that had played out countless times before, just with different products and different salespeople, but always the same underlying message: not for you. As a child growing up in Jacksonville, Elijah had spent countless weekends at the shore with his father, watching sleek vessels cut through the waves while wealthy families enjoyed the freedom of the open water. "Someday," his father would tell him, "if you work twice as hard and stay focused on what matters, you could be out there too." It wasn't just about the luxury or status. It was about the boundless horizon, the sense of possibility, the freedom. That promise of someday had fueled Elijah through decades of dedication. Through his undergraduate years at Howard University, where a biology professor had suggested he consider a less demanding field than medicine. Through Harvard Medical School, where he'd been repeatedly mistaken for janitorial staff while studying late in the library. Through his surgical residency, patients sometimes requested the real doctor when he entered the room, despite the white coat and credentials that matched his white colleagues. Each obstacle had only strengthened his resolve. By 40, he had developed a groundbreaking technique for minimally invasive valve replacement that reduced recovery time by 60%. By 45, he had founded Washington Medical Technologies to refine and market specialized instruments for cardiovascular procedures. And 3 months ago, at 52, he had sold the company to pharmaceutical giant Medicorp for a sum that had made financial security a certainty for generations of his family. The boat wasn't just a luxury purchase. It represented the fulfillment of that childhood promise. After decades of putting work first, missing family vacations for conferences, sacrificing sleep for research, enduring countless microaggressions in the medical establishment, Elijah was finally prioritizing joy. The yacht would be where his family could gather, where his grandchildren would create memories, where he could finally enjoy the fruits of his labor. His casual attire today was deliberate. After years of wearing the white coat as armor, of keeping his credentials constantly visible to forestall assumptions, Elijah had reached a point in life where he no longer felt the need to signal his success through appearance. His achievements spoke for themselves, and he had earned the right to walk through the world comfortably on his own terms. Yet the familiar pattern persisted. The luxury car salesman who had ignored him until he mentioned his profession. The real estate agent who had shown him only properties in predominantly black neighborhoods despite his 7-figure budget. The maitre d' who had tried to seat him near the kitchen despite his reservation for the best table. Each time Elijah had to decide whether to swallow the indignity quietly or speak up and risk being labeled difficult or angry. Recently, something had shifted in his calculus. His 17-year-old son had come home from a similar experience at a high-end electronics store, upset but resigned, saying, "That's just how it is, Dad." The acceptance in his son's voice had struck Elijah like a physical blow. Was this the legacy he wanted to leave? That his children should expect and accept discrimination as an unchangeable fact of life? That night, Elijah had made a promise to himself. He would no longer quietly take his business elsewhere to avoid confrontation. He would no longer protect the feelings of those who showed no concern for his dignity. His children deserved to see their father stand up for himself with the same excellence and integrity he had brought to his medical career. Catherine Martinez strode through the administrative offices of Oceanside Luxury Marina, returning from a meeting with potential investors for her expansion plans. The negotiations had gone well, but she was always happiest returning to the showroom floor, the heart of the business she had built from nothing. Pausing at the observation window that overlooked the main showroom, Catherine scanned the floor with practiced eyes, assessing the day's activity. Her attention quickly focused on the dynamic unfolding below. Bradley Sterling, her top-earning salesman, was guiding a white couple through the features of a mid-range yacht while repeatedly ignoring a black man who was examining their most expensive models. Catherine narrowed her eyes, watching more carefully. The black customer wasn't moving like a casual browser. He was studying specification sheets methodically, making notes, and examining technical components with the focus of someone who understood what he was looking at. When he tested the quality of the sliding door mechanisms on a display model, a telltale sign of an experienced buyer, Catherine's suspicions were confirmed. This wasn't someone killing time. This was a serious customer being deliberately overlooked. Her concern deepened as she observed Bradley actively intercepting a junior salesperson who attempted to assist the man. Even from a distance, Catherine could read Bradley's body language, the dismissive gesture, the conspiratorial lean, the way he positioned himself to create a barrier between the potential customer and any assistance. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was a pattern. As she continued to watch, Bradley repeated the behavior with a black couple who had entered the showroom, steering them toward the exit with subtle but unmistakable tactics, while lavishing attention on less promising white customers. Catherine moved to her office computer and pulled up the visitor log, a standard practice she had implemented years ago to track potential high-value clients. Near the top of today's entries was Dr. Elijah Washington, Washington Medical Technologies. A quick search confirmed her suspicions. This was the same Dr. Washington whose groundbreaking medical device company had been acquired by Medicorp, in a deal splashed across the business pages just months earlier. The man Bradley was shooing away like an unwelcome intruder could easily purchase their most expensive vessel without financing. Catherine's jaw tightened. She had built Oceanside from the ground up after facing her own battles with sexism in the male-dominated yacht industry. Her business philosophy had always been simple. Respect everyone who walks through the door, judge customers by the content of their wallets rather than the color of their skin, and never make assumptions about who can afford luxury. How many sales had Bradley's behavior cost her over the years? How many affluent customers of color had walked away from Oceanside, taking their millions elsewhere rather than enduring such treatment? The thought made her blood boil, not just from a business perspective, but from her core values of fairness and respect. Catherine watched as Dr. Washington checked his watch and gathered his things, clearly preparing to leave after being ignored for nearly an hour. She had seen enough. This wasn't just about salvaging one potential sale. It was about addressing a fundamental problem that threatened everything she stood for as a business owner. With determined steps, Catherine headed for the elevator that would take her to the showroom floor. This situation called for more than a private conversation or a gentle reminder about customer service. It required decisive action that would send an unmistakable message throughout her organization. Bradley Sterling was about to learn an expensive lesson about the cost of prejudice. Elijah checked his watch one last time before tucking the Oceanus 85 brochure into his leather portfolio. After nearly an hour of being treated like an unwelcome intruder, he decided to take his business elsewhere. There were other yacht dealerships along the coast that might value the considerable commission his purchase would generate. The casual dismissal stung. It always did. But he had long ago learned that sometimes walking away preserved more dignity than fighting for basic respect. As he turned toward the exit, a woman's authoritative voice called out behind him, "Dr. Washington? I hope you're not leaving already." Elijah turned to find himself face to face with an elegant woman in her early 60s, her silver-streaked black hair framing a face that radiated both warmth and unmistakable authority. "Catherine Martinez," she said, extending her hand. "I'm the owner of Oceanside Luxury Marina. I noticed you've been examining Oceanus 85, and I wanted to personally apologize for keeping you waiting. That model is our flagship, and I'd be honored to show you its features myself, if you can spare a few more minutes." Surprised by this sudden shift in treatment, Elijah hesitated before accepting her handshake. "I appreciate the offer, Ms. Martinez, but I'm not sure this is the right fit for what I'm looking for." "Please call me Catherine," she replied, "and I understand your hesitation. But before you decide, I'd love to hear what specific features you're seeking in a yacht. The Oceanus has some remarkable capabilities that aren't immediately evident from the brochures." Something in her sincere manner made Elijah reconsider. He found himself discussing the yacht's twin MTU engines and advanced stabilization system, explaining his plans for extended Caribbean cruising with family and his interest in the vessel's range capacity for potential transatlantic crossings. "The fuel efficiency at 12 knots is impressive," he noted, "but I'm curious about the redundant navigation systems for offshore passages." Catherine nodded appreciatively. "You've clearly done your research. The redundancy is actually one of Oceanus's strongest selling points. We could take a closer look at the bridge layout on the floor model if you'd like." Their conversation was interrupted as Bradley Sterling suddenly materialized beside them. His demeanor transformed into one of eager attentiveness as he recognized his boss engaging with a potential customer. "Catherine, I see you've met Mr. Washington," he said smoothly, emphasizing the Mr. rather than the doctor title Elijah had used when signing in. "I was just about to assist him with the Oceanus specs after finishing with the Millers." Catherine's expression remained pleasant, but a new sharpness entered her eyes. "Actually, Brad, I was just wondering about Dr. Washington's experience in our showroom today. He's been here for nearly an hour." She turned to Elijah. "Have you received the assistance you were looking for during your visit?" The direct question hung in the air. Elijah could see Bradley's forced smile tightening at the corners, silently willing him to offer a polite, face-saving response. It was a familiar crossroads. Speak the uncomfortable truth or smooth things over to avoid conflict. "I have not," Elijah stated simply, choosing honesty over comfort. "Despite several attempts to ask questions about your vessels, Mr. Sterling repeatedly directed me elsewhere or suggested I look at more affordable options without any discussion of my budget or needs. Meanwhile, I observed him providing extensive assistance to other customers who arrived after me." Bradley's face flushed. "That's not exactly. I mean, the showroom was very busy and I couldn't help everyone at once." I simply prioritized customers who had appointments or who were clearly serious buyers. And how exactly did you determine who was serious? Catherine asked, her voice deceptively calm. Bradley faltered. Well, you develop an instinct in this business. You can tell. I've been watching from my office for the past 45 minutes. Catherine interrupted, gesturing toward the glass-walled space overlooking the showroom. I saw you intercept Sophia when she attempted to help Dr. Washington. I saw you escort 3 separate parties around the showroom while he waited. I'm curious about what instinct led you to believe he wasn't worth your time. By now, other customers had stopped their own conversations, the showroom growing quieter as the confrontation unfolded. The white couple Bradley had been assisting exchanged uncomfortable glances. Sophia, the young salesperson, hovered nearby with an expression torn between vindication and anxiety. This isn't the first time we've had this conversation, Brad, Catherine continued, her voice level but carrying throughout the now silent showroom. 3 months ago, the Alvarez family raised similar concerns. Last year, it was Dr. Chen and his wife. Each time, you assured me it was a misunderstanding. Bradley shifted his weight nervously. Different customers require different approaches. I'm just trying to maximize efficiency and focus on the most promising leads. Interesting you should mention that, Catherine replied. I reviewed our sales data last quarter. Did you know you have the lowest percentage of sales to customers of color among all our associates, despite Miami having one of the most diverse, wealthy populations in the country? She didn't wait for a response. It's a curious pattern for someone who prides himself on customer intuition. Bradley's expression hardened. With all due respect, Catherine, this business is about recognizing real buyers. I've been doing this for 20 years, and I know a serious client when I see one. Some people come in just to look at boats they could never afford. It's not about race. It's about experience. Experience? Catherine raised an eyebrow. Then let me share what your experience missed today. Dr. Elijah Washington is the founder of Washington Medical Technologies, which was recently acquired by Medicorp in one of the largest medical device deals of the year. He's a renowned cardiovascular surgeon who pioneered minimally invasive valve replacement techniques used in hospitals worldwide. Bradley's face drained of color as Catherine continued. The man you directed to more affordable options could purchase our entire inventory without financing. The browser you couldn't be bothered to assist came here specifically to purchase our most expensive vessel. She turned to Elijah. Did I miss anything, Doctor? That covers the essentials, Elijah replied quietly, his dignity intact despite the uncomfortable spotlight. Bradley's expression shifted from defensiveness to dawning panic as he realized the magnitude of his misjudgment, not just morally, but financially. The commission on an Oceanus 85 would have been the largest of the quarter, possibly the year. Catherine, I think we should discuss this privately, Bradley attempted, forcing a chuckle. This is clearly a misunderstanding that we can— No, Brad. This is clearly a pattern of behavior that we can no longer tolerate, Catherine interrupted. Oceanside was built on respect for every client who walks through our door. Your actions, today, and apparently many days before, directly contradict our core values. She turned slightly, making eye contact with the marina's security director, who had appeared near the entrance, a silent signal that had clearly been arranged beforehand. Your employment with Oceanside Luxury Marina is terminated, effective immediately. James will escort you to collect your personal items, Catherine stated firmly. Prejudice has no place in this business, or any business I own. Bradley stared at her in shock. You're firing me? Over this? I'm your top salesperson." "This isn't about numbers, Brad. It's about integrity," Catherine replied. "I can't have someone representing Oceanside who judges clients based on appearance, rather than interest and ability. The commission you lost today is nothing compared to the damage you've done to our reputation and values." The showroom remained silent as security escorted a shell-shocked Bradley toward the staff area. The power dynamic that had defined the morning had completely inverted. The salesman who had wielded selective attention as a weapon suddenly stripped of his position and privilege. Catherine turned back to Elijah, genuine regret in her expression. "Dr. Washington, I cannot adequately express how deeply sorry I am for your experience today. What happened doesn't reflect our values, and I hope you'll allow us a chance to prove that." Throughout the confrontation, Elijah had maintained his composure, neither gloating in Bradley's downfall nor shrinking from the public nature of the scene. The quiet dignity that had carried him through decades of similar situations remained intact, even as justice was finally, decisively served. "I appreciate your handling of the situation, Ms. Martinez," he said simply. "It's unfortunately rare to see such clear accountability." Around them, the suspended activity of the showroom slowly resumed. The other customers, witnesses to this unexpected drama, began speaking in hushed tones, some looking uncomfortable, others nodding in approval at Catherine's decisive action. The message was unmistakable. Money might grant access to luxury, but character determined how one wielded power. In the space of 15 minutes, the seemingly untouchable salesman had faced consequences that decades of subtle discrimination had insulated him from, while the customer he had deemed unworthy stood validated not just as a potential buyer, but as a human being deserving of basic respect. The flying bridge on the Oceanus is one of its most distinctive features, Catherine explained, as she guided Elijah through the yacht's impressive upper deck. The panoramic visibility combined with the integrated navigation controls makes it ideal for someone who plans to captain their own vessel rather than rely solely on crew. Elijah nodded appreciatively, running his hand along the polished helm. "Station. I've been sailing since college, mostly smaller vessels. Started with a 22-foot sloop my second year of medical school, barely big enough for overnight trips, but it was freedom on the water." As they toured the yacht, Elijah's knowledge of marine systems and navigation equipment became increasingly evident. His questions about the desalination capacity, the redundant power systems, and the advanced stabilizers revealed someone who had spent years researching and preparing for this purchase. "This wasn't an impulse decision," he explained, as they examined the master suite with its floor-to-ceiling windows. "I've been planning this specific purchase for years, setting aside time to learn proper yacht handling, studying vessel designs, even taking courses in offshore navigation. The dream started when I was watching boats from the shore as a child, but the actual planning began long before I could afford something like this." Throughout the tour, other salespeople approached with attentive professionalism, offering information about financing options, maintenance packages, and customization possibilities. The change in atmosphere was palpable. Respect had replaced suspicion. Curiosity had replaced dismissal. By the time they returned to Catherine's office to discuss specifics, Elijah had made his decision. The Oceanus 85 was exactly what he had been looking for, and Catherine's handling of the earlier situation had demonstrated values that aligned with his own. "I appreciate businesses that don't just talk about principles, but actually enforce them," he said, as they reviewed the purchase agreement. "Your response today made it clear what Oceanside stands for." Catherine smiled, but her expression remained serious. "What happened today was inexcusable, but it's also forcing us to examine our entire approach to customer service. Bradley's behavior didn't develop in isolation. She outlined the changes already being implemented. A comprehensive training program addressing unconscious bias for all staff members, new customer service protocols that standardize the initial approach to all clients, and a system for tracking metrics across demographic groups to identify and address disparities. We're also revising our commission structure, Catherine added. The previous system inadvertently rewarded employees who focused exclusively on certain types of clients. The new approach will emphasize inclusive service rather than reinforcing selective attention. As they finalized the details of the purchase, Catherine shared some of her own journey in the yacht industry. When I started 30 years ago, I couldn't get financing to buy the failing boat rental business I was managing. 6 banks turned me down despite a solid business plan. The last loan officer actually suggested I find a husband, if I wanted to, enter the marina business. Elijah nodded in recognition of the familiar pattern. Different barriers, same message. Exactly, Catherine agreed. Which is why today isn't about punishing Bradley. It's about changing systems that allow that kind of behavior to flourish. Your experience has become a catalyst for examining practices we should have addressed years ago. As Elijah signed the final paperwork that would make the Oceanus 85 his, the focus had shifted from the individual confrontation to the broader implications. What had begun as a routine example of discrimination had transformed into an opportunity for institutional change, a reminder that accountability could be constructive rather than merely punitive. 3 months later, the newly christened Second Opinion gleamed in the Miami sunshine, its sleek hull reflecting the cloudless sky as it welcomed guests for its inaugural celebration. Elijah stood at the stern, greeting friends and family as they boarded for an afternoon cruise to celebrate both the vessel and the recent graduation of his daughter from medical school. Dr. Washington, thank you for the invitation, Catherine said warmly as she arrived, handing him a carefully wrapped package. A small tradition at Oceanside, the first nautical chart of the vessel's home waters, framed for the new owner. Their relationship had evolved from that first difficult encounter to one of mutual respect. Catherine had proven herself to be a woman of her word, implementing every change she had promised while maintaining regular communication about the yacht's preparation and delivery. Catherine, glad you could make it, Elijah replied, accepting the gift with appreciation. And please, it's Elijah to friends. As the yacht cruised along the coastline, Elijah's family and friends enjoying the spacious decks and luxurious amenities, Catherine shared updates on the changes at Oceanside. The new service protocols had not only improved the experience for clients of color, but had enhanced customer satisfaction across the board. Sales data showed a 15% increase in purchases from diverse clients, while overall transactions had risen by nearly 10%. Turns out treating everyone with respect is good business, Catherine noted wryly. Who would have thought? Bradley Sterling, meanwhile, had discovered that word travels quickly in Miami's luxury sales community. After 3 dealerships declined to hire him despite his sales record, he had been forced to take a position at a much smaller operation selling mid-range boats, his commission potential a fraction of what it once was. As the afternoon progressed, Elijah's 17-year-old son approached him at the helm, watching as his father confidently navigated the sophisticated vessel. Dad, that took guts, standing your ground that day, he said quietly. Most people would have just left and gone somewhere else. Elijah glanced at his son, recognizing the moment for what it was. Not just approval, but the absorption of a lesson about dignity and perseverance that would shape his son's own responses to future challenges. Sometimes you have to be willing to make others uncomfortable to create necessary change, Elijah replied. The easy path isn't always the right one. Later, as sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Elijah and Catherine discussed his newest initiative, a program called Horizons that would take underprivileged youth from Miami's inner-city neighborhoods out on sailing experiences, teaching them maritime skills while expanding their sense of possibility. We'd need dock space and perhaps some basic facilities, Elijah explained. I can handle the funding, but access is the challenge. Catherine didn't hesitate. Oceanside can provide the marina space and support facilities. We have instructors who could volunteer as well. Her eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. This fits perfectly with our community outreach goals. Their partnership represented something more significant than a business transaction. It demonstrated how confronting discrimination directly could create opportunities that extended far beyond the individuals involved. As the evening concluded and the yacht returned to its berth, Elijah stood alone at the helm for a few quiet moments, reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. From the shore-bound child watching distant sails to the accomplished surgeon, fulfilling his dream, the path had never been easy. Each obstacle overcome had required both excellence and persistence, the courage to stand firm when others would have him step aside. The yacht represented not just personal achievement, but the vindication of his father's promise that hard work could overcome barriers, even if those barriers never fully disappeared. More importantly, it had become a vessel in both literal and figurative senses, carrying not just his family across water, but creating channels for others to follow, expanding the horizon of possibility for the next generation. As Miami's lights twinkled to life along the shoreline, Elijah guided the second opinion smoothly into its slip, feeling the profound satisfaction of being exactly where he belonged, at the helm of his vessel, charting his own course across waters once denied to people who looked like him. The freedom he had sought wasn't just about ocean winds and open horizons. It was about claiming the dignity and respect that every human being deserves, regardless of the color of their skin or the assumptions others might make.